Welcome into another episode of Raging with Ron and Riccardo, and we have our good friend with us, Doug Klotz, today. He is our special guest. He is the president and CEO of PsoriaFIX. G'day, Doug. Tell us a bit about how you got to be where you are now.
Good day, Riccardo, and Ron, thank you for having me. Bit of a story. I would not be here if you had asked me 30 years ago, would you want to start a company and start getting the word out about health and wellness? I would have said, not at all. I plan to be an astronaut, and that's what I'm going to do. But life changes, and you adapt with it. I spent 20 to 25 years in the software and the high technology industry. And with that, I was traveling hundreds of thousands of miles a year on airplanes, living in hotels, eating terrible rich food, sweets, wining and dining, maybe a few too many martinis. And after about 15 years, in my 30s, started having psoriasis present itself in various parts of my body, and kind of not unlike a cancer, it would just grow and expand and creep. And I would go to the doctors, and they would prescribe the steroids, they would prescribe the injections and the oral pills, etc., and nothing seemed to work. It would maybe mitigate it for a time being, but then the psoriasis would figure itself out and then continue to expand and get worse. And a lot of people think that psoriasis is just a rash and it's on your elbows or on your knuckles, etc. There's a lot of people out there, 7% of the population, that suffer from moderate to severe psoriasis like I did. And I'm here to tell you it can be quite debilitating. Psychologically, physically, pain. It affected my career, it affected my marriage, it affected my life, my demeanor, literally my outlook. And I didn't even like myself. It wasn't my fault necessarily. I know that now, but there was a lot of times where I was just mad at the world. And it wasn't because I'm a bad person. It was because I was in a lot of pain and suffering and frustration. So after trials and tribulations, my formal education is actually as a scientist. I studied Astro-Physics at Berkley. I'm not a biochemist. I'm not a molecular biologist. I'm not a doctor, a medical doctor. But something was weird. I refer to it as a third-party apathy. And the institutions that we trust, Western medicine specifically, is really good at catastrophic care. Really good when you break a bone or even if you have a heart attack these days, and they'll stitch you up and they'll put a stent in there and they'll get you going out the door again, put you on a bunch of Western medical drugs, pharmaceutical industry. Spend a lot of money researching and developing, and arguably they can do miracles today that weren't possible 50, 100, 200 years ago. But the underlying causes of psoriasis, and as it turns out, as I started to turn the stones over, it's not just psoriasis. It's autoimmune disease, many if not all autoimmune diseases, chronic diseases, diabetes, heart disease, even cancer. And potentially there's a root cause that is underlying all of them. So as I progressed and did the research about 5 years ago, I saw a wonderful talk. I searched high and low. I tried every diet. I gave up drinking for years. I went vegan, hardcore militant vegan. I tried Atkins diet. I did low fat, carbohydrate, you name it. I did every diet, and nothing ever seemed to be able to reverse my psoriasis. Sometimes it would pause, but it would never get better. And I saw a talk about 5 years ago, after many years of trying to science it, trying to solve it, that being psoriasis. And this talk by a very talented professor in UCSD, Rob Knight, brought in the concept of microbiome. And I'd never even thought of microbiome. Don't you take antibiotics for that to get rid of them? Isn't that a bad thing? Well, it turns out microbiome is very important for us to be healthy and for us to have a healthy immune system. And it is also kind of secretly underlying a lot of the causes of our chronic diseases, including potentially prediabetes, diabetes, and obesity. So when I put my scientific background, education towards this, again, I'm not a doctor, but I reasoned that there had to be a solution. Some people solve their psoriasis, and magically, they don't know why. Well, I know why now. And the underlying cause is that our immune system is attacking to us because we have applied triggers over our entire life. We have genes that map out how our cells and our body is going to function, our proteins, etc. But sometimes the message doesn't come through. There was a David Sinclair uses the analogy of like a scratched CD. Well, that code is still down there, but there's scratches on top of the CD, and your CD player has trouble reading it. So if there's a way biochemically that we could put the right foods into our body and the right supplements, we could polish that CD, and our body could read the genetic code that we're all born with, which is ideally, if we're born and we survive healthy through childhood, we have good code. So there is a way that we can eat and we can reverse what's called epigenetics to get back to that good code and undo a lot of the damage that's been done to our bodies. I was able, after just 6 months, when I finally put the kind of the secret combination, there's no magic weird trick to this stuff, but there is a very complex combination of things that you have to do. But once you know how to do it, it becomes very easy. I was able to reverse my psoriasis to the point where one point I had 75% coverage over my entire body. You go to PsoriaFIX.com, you can see a picture, a montage. Actually, I have a copy of it right here of me from a long time ago. You can't see it too well here, but the top left, I was quite obese and had psoriasis very severe on my abdominal area, my legs, my arms. But by the time down here, I think it's the bottom right corner here, I was able to lose 40 pounds and reverse my psoriasis completely.
Wow.
So the long story short, I reversed my psoriasis. I went back and I wanted to answer the question to myself, why was I able to reverse the psoriasis? And I started to uncover this third-party apathy, that there has been knowledge on how to do this for 20, 30, 50 years, maybe even 100 years. But our establishments, for whatever reason, choose to take a different path, more expedient path. It's easier for a doctor to prescribe a pill than to tell you to eat a low carbohydrate, high healthy fat diet and go out and get exercise. So that's what brought me into the PsoriaFIX regime, and I'm also working on a couple of other projects, Omnivia, which ultimately is going to be helping people find answers that their doctors aren't able to give them. And it's not the doctor's fault. Food causes what we eat. It ultimately is correlated to, or the cause of, over 60% of all chronic infections.
So on psoriasis particularly, Doug, you know, just for my benefit and also some of the people that are watching, talk a little bit about what it is specifically. And then more importantly, when you're talking about the fix, give us some guides along the way on what that looks like. And by the way, don't ever show me that picture again, because after knowing you all this time, I don't ever want to see that again. I'm offended.
It's painful for me to look at, I'll tell you that much.
Not even the current picture, actually. So, you know.
I was going to say, by the end, he was looking like he was going to audition for Batman. I was like, oh,
right.
I'm good with that, you know.
I've known Doug too long, so that was painful for me. Don't ever do that again.
Oh, no worries. Psoriasis is a disease of the skin. It's not even a disease. I'd like to call it something else. If you go to your doctor, they're going to call it a disease. Let's call it an imbalance in your immune system that presents itself as a rash on your skin. What it is your immune system is attacking your own skin cells, your keratin cells, your epithelial cells, etc. Why your immune system is doing that is because it's resulted in an imbalance in your immune system, and it's programming on how to go attack foreign, not self cells. So our immune system, we actually have two. We have an innate immune system, which is like your soldiers on the front line. They see somebody that isn't supposed to be there, they arrest them or shoot them or whatever soldiers do. But sometimes infiltrators can camouflage themselves, and they can get through the front line of the soldier, and that's what the adaptive immune system is for. It has to learn what a pathogen looks like, or a toxin, or something that's not supposed to be there. As we get older, when what's called our epigenetics, which is how our genes express themselves based on environmental factors throughout our entire lives, and that can change over our lives, that could change in a couple of days under severe circumstances. And your genes can be turned on and off. So you can reverse, you can put the genie back in the bottle, as it turns out. We now are starting to learn this. This is brand new, latest and greatest biochemical science that's going on in the medical and the research communities. When the adaptive immune system gets a little kerfuffled, it starts to attack cells that look very similar. And when you eat wheat gluten, many people have a problem with gluten because gluten looks very similar to some of the native proteins in our own body. So as a result, if your immune system isn't following the instructions from your genetic code properly, and it has a little bit of a scratch on that CD, your immune system can start to attack self, and you present with some kind of autoimmune disease. In my case, it was psoriasis, which I'll tell you, I was very lucky, because if I kept the lifestyle that I was doing, I probably would have ended up morbidly obese, diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and most likely would have heart disease by now. I'm 51, going on 52 years old. I have less gray hair today than I did when I was 45. My gray hair was all the way up to the top. So there's many things that your body knows how to go and repair these things. A lot of us have premature aging. We don't need to be as physically old as we are compared to our chronological age. So by doing certain things, the FIX, as you asked, food, immune system, and exercise, that's what the FIX stands for. There's a type of diet that you can do, which is anti-inflammatory. We all hear about inflammation. Inflammation is, 4 out of 5 doctors survey will reduce inflammation, right? Well, what really is inflammation? Inflammation is when your immune system is pissed off and it's attacking something. Usually it's supposed to be a pathogen, you get a cold, or an injury, you got a cut or you broke a leg. When your immune system chronically starts attacking your own cells in your own body for a long period of time, you get chronic inflammation, and that causes some real problems. Your immune system can attack any system in your body, your skin, your bones, your stomach, your gut, your arterial lining, your heart, your blood, your immune system. Your immune system can attack your own immune system. So by adopting a lifestyle that is anti-inflammatory, that's the first step to reverse a lot of these chronological diseases. I heard your previous guest, Ron, was talking about some of the interesting challenges going on politically and socially right now. And you asked about COVID-19, and it was a big surprise to me, but the way that this virus attacks our bodies is through one of the vectors is through the immune system. People with compromised immune systems, and let me clarify that. People who have immune systems that aren't functioning as well, or that are a little older, so their immune systems aren't producing a certain type of immune cell called a naive T cell, which I won't get into the science on that, but this means elderly people and people who already have some pre-underlying health conditions. Those are the folks that were getting the COVID-19 very severe disease and potentially ending up on intubation with, once you ended up with a tube, you only had about a 50% survival rate. If our society were kind of turned a different way, if we were educated better, our doctors, ourselves, our institutions, the third-party apathy, as I mentioned, so easy just to take a pill and some prednisone and hope that your psoriasis goes away. Well, it didn't work for me. If we were better educated in our nutrition and the FIX, food, immune system, and exercise. Food, have the right diet to reverse inflammation. Immune system, do the things, take the supplements and do the things, environmental things necessary to calm your immune system down, cool it off. I call it being a little Fonzie. When your immune system's pissed at you, you're going to know it. You're going to have a lot of chronic diseases. You're going to have joint pain. You're going to have pain all over your body. You're going to have headaches. You're going to have tinnitus. You're going to have muscles that are twitching and you don't know why. And you won't necessarily associate all these things together to be the same thing, but they are. This is the immune system telling you that you're doing something wrong. You're on the wrong diet. In many cases, usually it's too many carbohydrates. We're now learning that carbs, we can have insensitivity to carbohydrates, especially as we get older. I have a saying, carbs are for kids. When you're young and you're growing and you're in puberty and you're in high school and you're athletic, et cetera, you need the carbohydrates, you need all the calories you can get. But as we get older, our hormones slow down, this epigenetic thing again, our metabolisms go down. We don't tend to stop eating the number of French fries and pizzas, unfortunately, and burritos. And that's part of the systemic problem that's leading to these chronic diseases. We're all living longer. I think we all deserve the opportunity to live healthier also.
And given the current environment, Doug, with COVID specifically, we're seeing a lot of publicity in and around, you know, immune systems and what can be done to enhance, strengthen, or make them more aware, or make the soldiers recognize what to attack better, is really topical right now. You know, in fact, I had a person that I've known several people that were stricken with COVID, right? And just 2 days ago, a person that I'm really close to was diagnosed and is home, starting to experience some suffering. Again, some underlying conditions in this. I don't want to get off of the psoriasis thing, but since it's immune systems that we're talking about, you know, we were looking at regimens for him specifically, right? Like of what vitamins to take, how, you know, what lifestyle to change to strengthen his immune system so that he can battle this, you know, illness, quite frankly, more effectively, because he's diabetic, he's overweight, he's got a few of those things that seem to be more challenging at times. Now, he hasn't experienced it yet, but I'm concerned about him. And so pretty topical, pretty real stuff. And, you know, it's all over the news. And I was looking at, you know, do you take zinc? Do you take, you know, high doses of vitamin C? Do you take high doses of vitamin D3, right? And our producers of this show, which you had an opportunity to meet prior to coming live, they're very much educated in health and wellness and have some solutions of their own, have educated me, quite frankly. I'm sure, Riccardo, you've been educated as well through some of that, but I'm curious to continue to learn more because it's so topical right now. It should be topical every day, but now that we have a pandemic in place, it seems that, you know, it's really tripped the trigger for a lot of people.
Definitely. As you know, the COVID topic and the potential remedies or the ways to address it, have become quite controversial in just a very, very short few months. So I have no problem talking about the controversial ones and the non-controversial ones, but I'll make sure to point that out and point out where the science is. I do all of my research based in the latest and greatest quality science. An important point to make is that there's a lot of studies out there. I'm not going to say that they're quality or not quality, but there's different levels, there's different degrees of science and research and studies that we can trust compared to others. We heard a lot of Dr. Fauci getting up there and saying, well, we got to wait for the clinical trials. Well, what does that mean? If you put somebody into a room for a month and feed them some rice or some sugar or some fat or some protein and you test how their body reacts, it's a very different outcome and ability for the researcher to record the data accurately than it is if you hand out a survey to 10,000 people and say, go fill out this survey and tell me how much you drank every single night for the past month. Well, people tend to have an affinity for thinking optimistically about how well they did or how well they didn't.
And if they were doing it properly, they probably won't remember exactly how many they had to drink. Right?
That's right. Now, I know, Ron, that you might not experience this, but I'm here to tell you that last week, I can't exactly tell you how many glasses of red wine that I have, but I'm sure that it's maybe a couple more than I thought that I did.
So, and that's part of the psoriasis fix?
That's right. Red wine is not bad for you, okay? Red wine is not bad. And maybe not all things in moderation, by the way.
Down red wine tonight after this.
Red wine does a number of wonderful things. It has polyphenols, which cause the sirtuins to reverse your bad genes and turn on good genes. It increases your HDL, makes you feel a little bit better. Too much red wine, not so much. You're going to get over a level of toxicity to your acetylcholine that you don't necessarily want to have, leading to a really bad hangover the next day.
So if I'm going to fall off the wagon tonight, just run down the path, how many bottles of red wine should I drink?
In your case, Ron, I think maybe you should just have like a shot of red wine for the whole week and just leave it at that. I don't want to be that guy.
I was going to try and line up the bottles, you know what I mean, and rock.
Hey, if you want, I'll come over and help you work on that and drink those.
Come on. You're always welcome. Let's go.
Yeah. So here's the deal with COVID-19. It is a coronavirus as we know. It also has some similarities in what are called its S and its E proteins, which are the outside proteins that allow it to attach to our cells. And without getting into any of the conspiracy thing, again, I don't believe in conspiracy theories, but I do believe in investigating coincidences. There are some coincidences about the proteins, the S protein, the E protein of the COVID-19 virus compared to other viruses that don't have those types of proteins. And research that was being done on the I shouldn't say COVID-19, but research that was being done on the coronavirus. And this is in the literature. This is not me talking. This is not speculation. I'm just citing the research papers out there from some of the top researchers on the coronavirus. What we know about how it attacks the human body is it uses the ACE protein on our cells, the ACE2 protein, to get into our cells. We don't even know what ACE stands for. I wouldn't be able to remember right now anyway if I wanted to try. But what it does mean is that it can get into our lungs, it can get into our sinuses, it can get into our certain cells of our blood, it can get into the lining, the epithelial cells on our arteries. That's just the tip of the iceberg. They're finding it in the kidneys, they're finding it in the heart, they're finding it in the liver, they're finding it in the brain, they're finding it in the nervous system. So this little guy can get around because we have a lot of ACE2 receptors on our cells. And when it does get around, one of the areas it gets around too for the people who are immunodeficient is the immune system, the white blood cells, the lymphocytes, and the T cells. And if you already have a compromised immune system, then your immune system is not able to produce enough of the antibodies necessary to take this thing out. If you have a strong immune system, you got a better than a 99.9% chance that this is just going to be the flu, or you might not even know that you had it. So the question then really isn't, okay, I'll let all the conspiracy theorists speculate about where the virus came from and was it engineered, and that's not me. Again, I will question coincidence, but what I will tell you is that one of the examples of a strong immune system is a healthy level of vitamin D. 30 micrograms per deciliter or more in your blood serum. Isn't it interesting that if you break into the people who had severe COVID-19 compared to the people with the coronavirus who didn't have it, vitamin D is a great indicator of those people. A low level of vitamin D, below 20 micrograms per deciliter, was a great indicator that you were going to get severe COVID-19. So having elevated having elevated vitamin D levels in your blood is correlated with not getting severe COVID, as an example.
What would you recommend for somebody watching that's fearful of immune deficiency, susceptibility, I guess is the best way to say it. You say it much more eloquently than I do, but that compromised immune system, or what would you recommend that they do? What would you recommend? Great question.
There are a spectrum of things you can do. Of course, they all revolve around keeping your immune system healthy. It can be as simple as take some more vitamin C. Does vitamin C stop COVID-19? We have no data. It does or it doesn't.
How much do you take?
What I take, and here's what I do, is I'll take 1,000 milligrams a day. Now, the US RDA says 100 milligrams a day, and it's very controversial science out there because people say if you take too much vitamin C, you might get kidney stones. We don't have any data that you get kidney stones from vitamin C unless you already had a renal problem. So if you have a kidney problem, be careful with your vitamin C. If you don't have a kidney problem, you're fine. We also have data through the science since the 1930s that the human body can tolerate happily up to 50 or even 70, 80,000 milligrams per day of vitamin C. It is one of the safest substances that we know in medical community that you can put into your body. I'm not advocating putting that much into your body. There is a study going on in China that we're very interested to hearing what came from Wuhan, that they were giving 24,000 milligrams per day intravenously to severe COVID patients and also people with moderate. They had very severe flu-like symptoms. They weren't intubated, but they were presenting into the hospital with COVID and respiratory problems, and they put them on intravenous vitamin C. 24,000 milligrams of intravenous vitamin C is a lot. If you take a pill, you really only get 1/10 of that amount. So if it's 1,000 milligrams, your body, your blood serum is really going to only go up by maybe 100 milligrams. Here's the thing about vitamin C is that it only has a half-life of about 45 minutes in your body. And then your body just pees it out.
Yeah.
So to protect yourself, and this is what I do, is I'll take 1,000 a day just to have a baseline. But if I feel, let me tell you what, I was really, really concerned about even getting the common cold. I get a common cold every other spring. Nobody wanted to get a cold and be coughing in the past 3 or 4 months, right? That would have been, you would have been ostracized. Obviously,
yeah, been burned at this
you have the bat flu. So anytime I felt any kind of under the weather, I took extra vitamin C precaution, and I was taking 1,000 milligrams an hour for the day that I felt that way. And this is for me. I've done this before. I know that when I take 1,000 milligrams an hour and a few other supplements for my immune system, it gives my immune system what it needs to fight off the cold. Because we don't have very good antivirals. It's the best antiviral is our immune system. Yeah. That's it. There is no antibiotics like we have for bacteria. Bacteria are very different from viruses. So by taking that 1,000 milligrams a day, roughly about 12,000 a day. I don't do it for the full 18 hours when I'm awake. I was able to reverse any of the that pre-sore throat feeling you get before you actually get the sore throat, or just like a little tickle in your throat when you're going to start having that cough. And I was able to avoid it. It wasn't just the vitamin C. I also kept my vitamin D levels in proper form, which I take about 1,000 IUs a day, international units. I also take quercetin. Quercetin is a supplement. You can go and get it at GNC or the vegetable, what do you call it? The pill store. I forget the name of it. Quercetin is acts both as an antiviral to some degree. There is data that correlates it to being an antiviral, but it also acts as an isonophore for zinc and an ionophore. And what that means is it can transport zinc from outside your cells into the inside of your cells. Zinc is what does have efficacy that we know with, not still waiting for the data on COVID-19, but with other coronaviruses, we know that zinc has efficacy correlated to kill as an antiviral the virus. So therefore, I take the zinc, I take the quercetin, I take the vitamin C and the vitamin D, and I make sure I get about at least a half an hour of cardio type exercise, if not more, each day for 5 to 6 days a week.
So how much do you take?
Sorry?
How much zinc do you take?
Zinc, not very much. It's only about 30 micrograms a day. And I only really take it if I'm feeling something coming on. I get it from the little Zycam, which are the zinc tablets that they say, could shorten colds or reduce colds. I don't have any data, and I don't point to the studies around it, yay or nay, but I do know that it has zinc in it, and it's an easy way. It's a lozenge to get the zinc in to the system.
Now, the third-party apathy that you talked about earlier, that's where a lot of the conspiracies come in, and it's the doctors are hand in hand with the pharmaceutical companies. They don't really want to tell you how to get better because they want to sell more drugs. Where are you at on that from what you've discovered from your journey?
That's a great question. This is where I don't believe in conspiracy theories, but I do strongly question coincidences. We have extensive scientific literature that shows that nutrition, what we eat, has a tremendous effect on chronic diseases and our health and well-being. We know that. It's obvious. So I have a question for you folks out there and your viewers to ask yourself. Why is it then that most medical schools, at least in the United States, only require our doctors, your primary health care practitioner, most likely only had 4 hours of nutrition training through their entire 10 to 12 year medical school education program? Why is that? We can correlate over 60% of most, if not all, chronic diseases to nutrition. Either the wrong kind of nutrition, deficiencies, too much. Why aren't our docs better trained? If I was starting a medical school, I'd put them through a year of nutrition first. That would be my first year of medical school. Let's take medical schools. Instead of making them a 4-year degree, make them a 5-year degree. I mean, they're already going to go to school for 12. Why not make it 13 years? But give them a year of education to understand what nutrition does. How, from a macronutrient level, what do the carbohydrates do? Carbohydrates, there's not just one carbohydrate. There's a lot of carbohydrates. There's simple carbohydrates. There's fiber. There's soluble fiber. There's insoluble fiber. How do they impact you? These things are important to know, but we're not taught that. We're certainly not taught that in 2nd grade or in 8th grade or anywhere in high school that I ever remember being taught that level. It's been arguably a long time since I've been in high school, so I don't know if these things are being taught now. But what I do know is that there is still a thing called the standard American diet, and it consists of hamburgers, French fries, pizza, ice cream, burritos, all kinds of great food that we love, beer. I like beer. I choose to not drink beer because the effects that beer have on me, I've recognized that I am very carbohydrate non-tolerant. And when I have carbohydrates, I can feel the inflammation literally coursing through my body. I can feel my immune system reacting in a very negative way. And when I keep my carbohydrates personally under 25 grams a day, I feel like $1 million. I feel healthy. I can go for runs and hikes. I can go for 15-mile hikes and never even be fatigued. Interesting anecdote on the COVID thing. About 2 months ago, during the end of March, early April, I was feeling fatigued in the afternoon. I never get fatigued. I'm always doing my workouts and my hikes. And the exercise is very important. We can go into exercise if you want, but exercise is probably the most powerful medicine that you can give to your immune system for a number of reasons. But I never get fatigued, and I genuinely believe that I was exposed to the coronavirus, but I never got COVID-19. I felt sleepy a couple of days. Like I said, I did feel kind of a sore throat. I never got tested for whether at this time it was influenza or A or B or COVID-19, but I did get the antibody test later on. It showed negative that I did not have coronavirus, but I wasn't feeling sick at that time anyway. So lost my train of thought a little bit, back to the immune system. Keeping the immune system strong, food, what we eat, and the two main things, if we don't get to it, two things I want to make sure that your viewers and yourselves are aware of is simple carbohydrates. Glucose breaks down to glucose. Your blood doesn't care whether it's a cooked carrot or whether it's a sugar. If you're to take a baked potato and eat the whole baked potato, forget about the sour cream and the bacon and chives for that second. But if you took the equivalent of sugar, it'd be like taking an 8-ounce glass, pouring it halfway to 3/4 full of sugar, putting in some water, making a syrup, and just scarfing that down. Wow. That's how bad a baked potato is. Wow. Now, we don't eat raw potatoes. Raw potatoes, pure fiber. But when we cook it, it denatures those insoluble fibers, and we get simple carbohydrates. And our blood says, you've had too much glucose. That causes inflammation. So that's one food. Simple carbohydrates, stay away from them. If it's sweet or it's starchy, and you're over the age of, say, 40, carbs are for kids, man. Just let it go. Yeah. It's a treat once a month, or maybe every couple of weeks. Yeah. Or if you're just running 25 miles a day because you're a marathoner, go for it. Eat whatever you want. The second is the seed oils, the omega-6 fatty acid seed oils, safflower seed, sunflower seed, cottonseed. You know what Crisco is? Crisco is cottonseed oil. You know what they used cottonseed oil for 100 years ago? For oiling the gears and the wheels on tractors on farms, because it wasn't fit for human consumption. It wasn't until they figured out how to hydrogenize cottonseed oil that they could make it palatable or consumable by human beings. But as it turns out, that created what's called trans fat. And trans fats, by the way, is why saturated fat got a bad rap. Trans fat looks like saturated fat, so everybody thought saturated fat, trans fat were the same thing, but they're not. Trans fats are unnatural fats. They don't occur in nature, and we can't eat them, and we shouldn't. They're very unhealthy for us, and they cause a lot of inflammation. But the omega-6 seed oils cause a tremendous amount of inflammation for various reasons as well. Those two foods, think about next time you have some French fries at McDonald's, you're thinking about potatoes that are cooked under high heat in canola oil, which comes from Canada oil. That's why it's called canola oil, because they didn't want to call it rapeseed oil.
For good reason.
So if we were to reduce the amount of, by the way, a lot of carbohydrates and a lot of omega-6 seed oils are what end up in processed foods. So when you hear, don't eat processed foods, that's one of the really good reasons to not, two of the really good reasons to not eat processed foods. Too many omega-6 oils would cause inflammation, and too many simple carbohydrates, which cause inflammation. We would cut our chronic disease, infection, healthcare costs in America alone, I don't know, 30%, maybe more.
Wow. It's interesting. In terms of going back on that with the, you talked about the nutrition side of things. I have some friends who've got a 2-year-old daughter. I was talking to them just last night, and they don't identify themselves as anti-vaxxers. But when they started to ask the question about vaccines, when they were talking about getting her vaccinated, and they were like, well, okay, why does this vaccine have, just trying to remember the chloroform in it? Why does it have mercury in it? Why does it have, I think there was some sort of fetal element in there as well. And they were asking the questions, and they got a lot of kickback. They got a lot of anger, the fact that they were even asking the questions. They ended up going down a different route. And they don't call themselves anti-vaxxers at all, but in terms of, if you go into a medical practitioner, you're getting that sort of kickback. I mean, what can you do as someone that's been there and gone a different route yourself to find out the answers?
Vaccines are an interesting topic. When I was growing up, when we were growing up, you just got the vaccine and that was fine. And you didn't get polio. You didn't get the measles. I don't believe there was a chickenpox vaccine when I was growing up, but I never got the chickenpox, and since I've never gotten shingles, so I didn't need to worry about it. Vaccines have made a tremendous impact on civilization. They've saved millions, tens, maybe even hundreds of millions of people from severe pain and suffering, and given them a life of health and wellness that they probably wouldn't have otherwise had there been no vaccine. Having said that, again, I don't believe in conspiracy theories, but I do question coincidences, and I also want to know what's in my vaccine. So much talk right now about a COVID-19 vaccine is going on, which is interesting, and I'm curious myself how this is going to play out, because coronavirus is an RNA virus. It's mutating all the time. So how are you going to make a vaccine for that? How are you going to get up on TV and sell me that you made a vaccine for that, when everybody in Earth that uses the internet knows that now, if you've watched this podcast, the coronavirus is always mutating. Last flu season, the news reports were they produced the wrong flu vaccine, because they have to pick one. Influenza A, influenza B, which one's it going to be this year? Well, we have to ramp up 100 million doses, so we got to pick one. We can't do them both. So which coronavirus, COVID-19 vaccine are they going to do this fall? Which one are they going to do next spring? And do they need to do it when the data is still out about what how severe the virus really is? If you look at how severe the virus is for people with predisposed and immunocompromised conditions, it's pretty bad. It's up there. It's in the single-digit percentages at the least. If you're older, in the case of one study I saw, over the age of 85 years old, it has a mortality rate of over 15%. That's pretty high. And those numbers, though, have brought up the mortality rate across all the population. So if we were to isolate the population into other age groups, and to not consider the immune compromised diseases, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, several autoimmune diseases, etc., this really is the flu, because we have strong immune systems. It's not affecting as much. So do we need to have a vaccine for the healthy people? My opinion is we don't. it would be very helpful to have a vaccine. If I was elderly and I was over 85 and there was a COVID-19 vaccine, I would like to have it. And so I think we should definitely pursue developing one if possible. It would be maybe drive the science so that we can develop a, what do they call it, a full spectrum vaccine that's able to cover RNA viruses, even if they mutate, by using a different mechanism rather than just the S protein or just the E protein. As for conspiracy, I'm an advocate of vaccines, but I'm an advocate of, it's like Ronald Reagan said back in the Cold War days, trust, but verify.
That's good advice. Good advice.
So Doug, we've went and talked about a lot of stuff about health and wellness. How do our viewers take advantage of your knowledge and the fix?
The fix is not my invention. All it is a amalgamation, pulling together all the data from these other sources. I did some science myself, with me being the only subject, n equals 1. To be more, to be more.
I would have been available to you.
Not by intent, but just by accident. People would always ask me about it. How did you do that? So I would tell them how I did it, and I would silently write down the data of what. I have some props here. It was more than just food, immune system, and exercise. I needed to go and monitor my own cholesterol, so I went and got my own cholesterol meter so I could watch my cholesterol on a daily basis. This will be helpful for all your viewers. Did you know that your cholesterol changes with a half-life of 72 hours? You go in to get your cholesterol checked once a year, maybe twice a year, maybe once every 10 years, maybe never, I don't know. And then your doctor says you have bad cholesterol. Well, your cholesterol could have been perfectly good 3 days before. It depends on what you ate.
Right.
If you went on a pizza and a beer bender and then fasted for one night and had your cholesterol checked, your cholesterol is going to be really bad the next day. Strangely enough, if you were to have eaten a very, very healthy, let's say bacon, not cured and uncured bacon, no hormones, no antibiotics, a humanely treated animal, good for the environment, organic, etc. And you ate that bacon for 3 meals a day for 3 days, and you went in to have your cholesterol checked, you guys might think that your cholesterol will be really high. And the data doesn't tell us that. The data is the inverse of that. In fact, the more fat you eat, the lower your triglycerides go. Why don't they tell us this? This is in the literature. It's been in the literature since the 1950s.
Interesting.
What's the big deal? This goes back to the third-party apathy, Riccardo. We've had this knowledge for a long time, and it's getting better all the time. In the past 10 to 20 years, our scientific instrumentation has become just nothing short of a miracle. We have microscopes, can see atoms practically. We can look inside the body. We can monitor every single chemical and spectral analysis and all that stuff. What we really do need to do now is we need to fund research that for-profit entities, and I'm including the American Heart Disease Foundation, by the way, because though they're a not-for-profit entity, they're still in the business of staying in business. And so therefore they have to generate the revenue to go do that. Love the American Heart Foundation. Sorry, American Heart Foundation. Love what they've done. They've done some tremendously good things, but this goes back to the third-party apathy. It's the standard of care. It's not the way it's been around there. I might lose my job. You name it, whatever that is. The human being is good, but something happens in this mob mentality when you have these bureaucracies that kind of take on a life of their own. And that's what I mean by third-party apathy. What we need are organizations or efforts or movements to go and study some of the things that are too expensive to study, or that there wouldn't be enough profit if we did study it. Vitamin C is a great example. Vitamin C, we haven't even scratched the surface with vitamin C, how it really works in our immune system and what it could really do. Because it's not just about 100 milligrams or no vitamin C or 10,000 milligrams. There's gradations, there's gradients in there. So what does it do at the various levels? Some polyphenols, for instance, act differently. Some of them, if in low doses, they're anti-inflammatory. In high doses, they can actually turn your genes on and off. if you choose the right polyphenol, presumably you're turning on the right genes. But this is complex stuff, and we need help. I had the benefit of being formally educated as a scientist. Most people didn't. Most people did. Mine was in studying the stars, but I used my scientific method and things that I learned and the tools that I gained to go and apply it to the science, because I had a real need. I was in a lot of pain. I was motivated. A lot of people are not motivated. They're not sick. They're not in pain. They enjoy drinking the pizza and the beer. Good for them. But what would be very helpful is if we had better institutions to help us go and fund the studies that nobody wants to fund. So we really knew what's going on at the immune system level, which is going to be very protective of our chronic diseases. And now we know it's going to be very protective in some pandemics, especially in the case of coronavirus, when it's attacking our immune system.
That's great, Doug. That's great. I really appreciate you coming on and talking to us about this and your journey. I don't know about you, Ron. I got from that to eat more bacon. That's what I got. So, so no, that's good. But no, Doug, President and CEO of PsoriaFIX, thanks very much for coming on, man. It's been a real pleasure, and it's been really educational, particularly for me.
It's been a real pleasure for me as well,
watching.
gentlemen. I thank you, and honored to be on the show, and I hope that something can speak and help to some of your viewers out there as well.
Doug, it's super helpful. I was mesmerized listening to you talk about this stuff, because I'm ignorant of a lot of the things you're talking about. So that education's super beneficial, and I'm sure a lot of people found it the same way. And appreciate it. Appreciate your friendship. Thanks for hanging out. And let's get soon.
Appreciate it. Have a good one.
I think Ron owes you a good bottle of red wine.
Yeah. Oh, if you're still recording, one more thought here. And a very wise woman once told me this: nothing tastes as good as being healthy feels.
Wow.
I like that.
So do I. Every time I'm looking at something that I shouldn't be eating, like a nice pizza or thing of French fries, I tell myself that nothing tastes as good as being healthy feels. It makes it a lot easier to just kind of keep walking by.
There's a mantra.
Very good.
Thanks,
okay.
Doug.
Thanks, Doug.
All right.
Cheers, man.
See you guys. Good to meet you,
Thank
Riccardo.
you. Cheers. Nice to meet you too, Doug.
Bye, Doug.
Cheers.